I cooked a lavish Thanksgiving dinner for my family, sent out the invitations early, smiled at every can't wait text. But on the day, they vanished. Without warning, without shame. I ate alone, whispering thanks to an empty table, until my grandson walked through the door, clutching his father's phone like it was a weapon. The messages he showed me tore through everything I believed was still holding this family together. I'm glad you're here. Stay with me until the end, and comment the city you're watching from. It helps me feel a little less alone knowing how far this story might go. It all started 3 weeks before Thanksgiving. I typed the message slowly, rereading it twice before I hit send. Hi all. I'd love to host Thanksgiving at the house this year. It's been too long. I'll make all the old favorites. Hope you can come. It had been 7 months since Jack passed. 7 long, quiet, uneven months. The kind of grief that doesn't announce itself loudly, but lingers like fog in corners of the house. I hadn't hosted a single thing since the funeral, but I thought, maybe this would help. A little light, a little warmth. The smell of cinnamon and butter in the oven, the sound of forks clinking over stories half finished. I wasn't asking for a miracle, just one good day. All 3 of my children responded eventually, not quickly, not with much enthusiasm, but they said yes. Thanks, Mom, sounds good. Of course we'll come, looking forward to it. We'll bring wine. So I started planning, not because I expected perfection, but because I needed purpose. Monday morning before Thanksgiving, I drove to the market at 7 a.m. sharp and stood in line behind young mothers juggling toddlers and men nervously calling their wives from the turkey aisle. I took my time. I picked out fresh rosemary, Yukon Gold potatoes, 3 kinds of apples for the pies. I even splurged on the good vanilla, the kind Jack used to say, smelled like love. For 3 days I cooked, stuffing from scratch. My mother's cornbread recipe, buttery green beans with almonds. Cranberry relish Jack hated but the kids pretended to like. 2 pies, apple and pecan, and a 21-pound bird that I basted every hour, the way Jack always did, with a mix of orange juice, butter, and whatever red wine we had open. By Wednesday night, the house smelled like comfort, like memory, like hope, if hope had a scent. I set the table that evening, not just the plates and napkins. I did it the old way. Pressed linens, polished silver, folded name cards, even though we all knew where we sat. 10 chairs, 10 plates, 10 glasses. The centerpiece was Jack's, a cluttered creation of pine cones, dried leaves, and tiny gold candles, arranged in a wooden tray he'd carved himself years ago. He'd made it during one of his retirement boredom phases, and I had laughed at it then. Now I ran my fingers across the grooves in the wood like they were braille. On Thursday morning, I was up by 6. I ironed my burgundy sweater dress and put on the gold acorn necklace Jack gave me on our 45th anniversary. He'd said I reminded him of the oak tree in our backyard, strong, rooted, and never needing to raise my voice to make my presence known. By noon, the turkey was resting. The pies were cooling. The house was spotless. The candles were lit. My hands trembled a little when I looked out the front window. But it was a good kind of tremble, I told myself. I paced the living room slowly, adjusting a cushion here, straightening a frame there. At 3 p.m., I took one last look in the mirror and gave myself a quiet nod. They'll be here soon. They said yes, and I believed them. The turkey was done. The driveway was empty. I glanced at the clock. 3:58 p.m., then back out the window. Nothing. Not Sarah's white SUV. Not Michael's hybrid with the dented side mirror. Not David's dusty blue truck that always sounded like it was falling apart even when it wasn't. Just leaves. Wind. And the quiet hum of a neighborhood too polite to interrupt. At 4:06, I got the first text, running a bit behind. Emma had a meltdown over her tights. Should be there soon. Sarah, 4:21, hitting traffic near the loop. Lacey's grabbing coffee, save us pie. Michael, 4:33, need to stop for gas. Sorry, Mom. Long morning. David. None of them mentioned each other. None of them said they were riding together. But all of them, at once, were delayed. I took a deep breath and went back to the kitchen. Turned the oven to warm. Checked the turkey again even though I didn't need to. Shifted the green beans to a lower rack. The house smelled like everything I wanted them to remember. Jack's cornbread stuffing, nutmeg and butter, pie crust cooling on the sill. At 4:50, I poured another glass of wine. Small, careful, still hopeful. At 5:10, I sent a group message. No worries. Everything's ready whenever you are. Take your time. Be safe. I even added a smiley face, passive and polite, the mother default. By 5:45, the stuffing was dry. The mashed potatoes were stiff. The cranberry relish had gone watery in its glass dish, and the driveway was still empty. I blew out the candles, left the big ones in the centerpiece flickering just a little longer. It felt wrong to smother Jack's handiwork before I had to. By 6 o'clock, I was sitting in my dining room alone, the table for 10 staring back at me like a question I didn't want to answer. No more texts came, no calls, not even a sorry still coming from any of them. At 6:12, I turned on the small radio in the kitchen, hoping the sound of jazz and static would drown out the ache. At 6:30, I stopped pretending. I fixed myself a plate, small scoop of everything. The turkey, still juicy from all those hours of basting. The stuffing, crumbling at the edges. The pie, still warm. I sat down at the head of the table, Jack's chair, because I didn't know where else to sit. I folded my hands and whispered grace. Not for them, not this time. Just for the food, for the memories, for Jack, wherever he was, for the strength to not let my voice crack when I said amen. Halfway through the plate, I gave up. The food was perfect. I couldn't taste any of it. My tongue felt heavy, my chest heavier. I reached for my wine and accidentally knocked over a fork. The clatter startled me, made the silence feel even louder. So I cried. Not the kind of crying you do at funerals, surrounded by flowers and casseroles and people who pat your hand and tell you how strong you are. No, this was quieter. The kind that starts in your throat and settles behind your eyes until it blurs everything. Just tears, soft and slow, falling into a plate no one had come to share. At 7:10, I heard footsteps on the porch. Quick ones, hesitant, then a knock. 3 short raps followed by a voice I hadn't expected to hear. Grandma? I wiped my eyes with a napkin and stood, my knees stiff, my heart stiffer. Opened the door. There he was, Elijah, 17, breathless. His hair windswept, his face pink from the cold. One sneaker untied. In his hand, a phone, his father's phone. His eyes were stormy, not crying, but close, not confused, but shaken. Grandma, he said again. I didn't know until tonight. And then he held the phone out like a warning. You need to see this. Elijah stood in the doorway, cheeks red from the cold, breathing like he'd just run half a mile. Grandma, you need to see this. I didn't know until tonight. His voice cracked on the last word. He held out a phone, his father's, like it was something dangerous. I stepped back to let him in. My hand still clutched the napkin I'd used to wipe my eyes. The warmth of the house rushed around him. The smell of uneaten dinner, the quiet jazz still humming from the kitchen, the ghost of 10 empty chairs behind me. He didn't even take off his coat. He just looked at me with something between heartbreak and fury. I'm so sorry, he said, holding the phone tighter now. I didn't know they were doing this. I didn't know until I saw the messages. What messages? He swallowed hard. Just sit down, please. I did, slowly. My knees stiff from too long at the table, my stomach tight from food I couldn't finish. He sat beside me and unlocked the phone. His father's lock screen, a picture of their dog, slid away. And then Elijah opened the group chat. Michael, she won't ask. She never does. We'll tell her Emma's sick again. Sarah, she's fragile. It's too much to host. Let's not make her feel bad. David, we'll deal with the guilt after pie. Lacey, LOL. Just tell her Elijah forgot the rolls and we'll bring leftovers tomorrow. There were laughing emojis, thumbs up, even a gif of a woman fake crying. My name wasn't mentioned, but I didn't have to be. I was her, the fragile one, the inconvenient one, the one they were erasing in real time while I folded napkins and basted a turkey for 21 straight hours. I couldn't breathe. "They're all together?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Elijah nodded. "At my house, right now." "Even you?" His face fell. "I didn't know. I thought we were just having dessert there after dinner here. That's what Dad told me." I blinked at him, at the phone, at the betrayal unfolding in blue and gray bubbles. He scrolled up and more messages appeared. "Michael, we'll eat around 5. Tell Mom we're coming late. Sarah, she won't notice. She's used to us being flaky. Lacey, I mean, she invited us in October. That's kind of desperate, no?" Each line cut deeper than the last. I reached for the phone and Elijah handed it over like it might break in his hands. "I didn't mean to find it," he said quickly. "I was looking for a charger in Dad's office. The phone buzzed. I saw my name in one of the notifications. I clicked on it, and this." I scrolled slowly. Words from my own children, mocking me, planning around me, building a story to excuse their absence before I even knew I'd been abandoned. "She's fragile. She won't ask questions." They were right. I hadn't asked. I hadn't even let myself wonder. Elijah sat silently beside me, his fists clenched on his knees. "I didn't know what to do," he said. "I got so angry. I almost said something right there at the table, but I couldn't. So I took the phone and ran. I'm sorry I didn't come sooner." "You're here now," I said. And I meant it. I could barely feel my own heartbeat, but I knew one thing with clarity. He'd come. They didn't. He did. I looked at him, this boy who had just torn open every lie holding my family together. And I saw someone standing on the edge of manhood, trembling with the weight of truth. "You didn't deserve this," he said. "You did everything. You cooked. You planned. You waited." I closed the phone slowly and set it on the table between us. The candles had gone out on their own. The turkey was cold. The wine was warm. But for the first time that night, I didn't feel entirely alone. "Elijah," I said gently, "thank you for telling me." He looked at me, and for the first time, his eyes filled with tears. "They made a plan to leave you out, Grandma." And I nodded because now I knew. They didn't forget. They never intended to come. Elijah sat quietly across from me, his fingers still curled loosely around the phone. The room had settled into a silence too thick for comfort, not peaceful, but dense, like the moment before a thunderclap. He opened his mouth once, closed it, then finally said, "There's more." I didn't flinch. I didn't nod. I just waited. He tapped into the email app, scrolled past a dozen unopened threads, and opened one marked, Next steps. Property evaluation and assisted care transition. I leaned forward slowly. The subject line felt like static in my ears. "They didn't mean for me to see this either," Elijah said. "It was forwarded by mistake. Dad was on the phone with Uncle Michael and left his inbox open." The email was from a woman named Denise, a real estate agent, the kind that puts compassionate relocation expert in her signature line, complete with a lavender heart. "Hi all, attached is the preliminary draft for the listing. Once Elaine is situated in supportive living, we can fast-track staging and photography. As discussed, let's aim for early December. It's a good window for buyers looking to close before the holidays. Please confirm if the guardianship paperwork is finalized. I'll loop in my legal team for smooth processing." Attached was a PDF labeled Rhodes Family Property, Draft Listing Copy.x. And there it was, my house, my home. Described like some quaint colonial in a brochure, charming 3-bedroom residence with vintage hardwood floors, sun-drenched breakfast nook, and legacy craftsmanship throughout. Legacy craftsmanship. Jack built the deck with his own hands. I'd spent years retiling that kitchen. That sun-drenched nook was where I read bedtime stories to all 3 of my children, and now they were selling it, as if I'd already left, as if I was some logistical obstacle to be quietly moved. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Elijah kept talking, but it was like hearing someone underwater. They call it supportive living, he said bitterly. Like it's some kind of gift. Like you can be tricked into losing your independence if they put it in soft enough language. He swiped again, to another email. This one between Michael and Jack's old accountant, just confirming that the temporary guardianship form was notarized. With Jack gone, we just need 2 physician assessments to formalize the transfer of authority. No rush. Elaine's still unaware, but things are progressing on schedule. I looked at Elijah. What guardianship? He hesitated. I don't know, but it says temporary. Maybe it's not legal. Maybe they're bluffing. They're not bluffing, I said, my voice like gravel. They're coordinating, plotting, like I'm some antique they're planning to quietly donate before Christmas. I stood up slowly. My knees cracked. My hands curled. I haven't signed anything, I said, not a single thing. I believe you. I would never give them the right to move me out of my own house. I know, Grandma. I picked up the phone again just to reread the phrase. Elaine is still unaware. How neat, how clinical, and how stupid of them. They forgot I kept every folder Jack ever gave me, every financial record, every legal draft. Jack believed in preparedness. I believed in filing cabinets. Elijah, I said carefully, I need you to go upstairs. In the hall closet behind the vacuum, there's a black file box. Bring it here. He nodded and bolted off. I walked to the window. The driveway was still empty. The leaves from the oak tree were scattered in brittle circles, like something had moved and then vanished. When Elijah returned, box in hand, I sat down at the dining table again. Not to eat, but to prepare. We weren't done. Not by a long shot. Elijah placed the black file box on the table like it was sacred. And maybe it was. Because everything inside it was Jack, methodical, precise, the kind of man who labeled things 3 different ways and color-coded the backup copies. I opened it slowly. The familiar scent of paper and dust and a faint trace of Jack's cologne hit me in the chest. For a moment, I just let it sit there. I wasn't ready to dig yet. Not until I was sure I could do it without shaking. Elijah, I said, not looking up. You said there's more. Tell me now. He sat beside me, the glow of the dining room light catching on the tears he hadn't wiped away. I found it 2 weeks ago, he said. I didn't know what it was at first. What? The will. I turned toward him slowly. What will? Grandpa's updated one. It was in Dad's office, bottom drawer behind the old tax folders. I was looking for printer paper, I swear, but I found an envelope. It said final, 2022 update in Grandpa's handwriting, and it was notarized. March 14th, that was 6 weeks before Jack had the stroke. Elijah, I didn't know what it meant until tonight. After dinner, their dinner, I heard Mom laughing in the kitchen with Aunt Denise. They were joking about how you still didn't know what Jack really left behind. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a folded set of papers, protected in a clear plastic sleeve. I made a copy, he said, before Dad could shred it. I took it with both hands. The first page was unmistakable. Jack's signature, his firm block print, his careful underlining. The notary seal pressed into the lower corner like a badge of truth. Dated, witnessed, official. I flipped to the second page, heart in my throat. To my beloved wife, Elaine Rhodes, I leave full ownership and control of all assets, real and financial, including the family home and all holdings managed by Cartwright and Grayson. I entrust her judgment fully, and she is to remain sole executor. It was all there, clear, unequivocal, final. My hands trembled as I read the next line. Any prior documentation is hereby void. No other party, including my children, is to assume authority unless explicitly named in this document. Tears spilled freely now, not out of grief, but the violent relief of knowing I hadn't imagined Jack's promises. I wasn't clinging to ghosts. He had protected me. He'd foreseen this. They told me it was lost, I whispered. After the funeral. Michael said Dad never updated anything, that the old will from 2009 still stood, that everything would be divided evenly. Elijah's jaw tightened. They lied, and they planned to erase you, quietly, Legally. I shook my head. He would have told me. Jack would have told me if he updated something so serious. Maybe he meant to. Maybe he thought he had more time. I ran my thumb across the embossed seal. He was always planning 2 steps ahead. He just didn't see them coming. They wanted to break this house into pieces, sell it, split it, move you into some place with gray walls and nurses who call you sweetheart instead of your name. My breath caught. They underestimated you, Grandma. I looked at him, 17, furious, loyal. And they underestimated you. He shrugged, but there was something new in his eyes. A quiet fire. Jack knew, I said almost to myself. Somewhere in him, he knew. And this was his way of making sure I still had ground to stand on. Elijah reached for my hand. What are you going to do? I looked around the room, the table still set, the centerpiece flickering low, the turkey untouched. My home, my life. I folded the will carefully and placed it back into its plastic sleeve. First, I said, we're going to put this somewhere safe. Then I looked up. And then, Elijah, we're going to war. It was just past 9 p.m. when I picked up the landline. The house was still. The kind of stillness that feels more like tension than peace. Elijah sat on the edge of the couch, silent, watching me like I might crumble or catch fire. I stared at the faded rotary sticker Jack had put on the receiver years ago, his neat handwriting. In case of nonsense, call Barlow. I smiled a little, then dialed. The line rang twice. Elijah? Came the voice, gravelly and alert despite the hour. No, I said, steadying myself. It's Elaine. Elaine Rhodes. A pause. Elaine, he said softly. I was wondering when I'd hear from you. There was warmth in his voice, but also something more. Something prepared. I found the will, I said. The updated one. Good, he said. You were always meant to. Jack made sure of that. I closed my eyes. They told me he never changed it, that everything would be split evenly. Barlow gave a quiet laugh. Not cruel, just tired. They would. But Jack didn't trust that story. He didn't trust what your son had been planning with that accountant. I warned him once, Elaine. I overheard a conversation at the country club. Michael and your daughter-in-law. They were tossing around phrases like probate cushion and asset liquefaction. He exhaled. It wasn't grief talk. My heart clenched. He knew? He suspected. Enough to act on it. That's when he called me. I sat down slowly at the dining table, the candles long burned out. Elijah leaned in, listening. I'm guessing you've seen the 2022 version, Barlow said. March 14th. Notarized by Helen Morano. Witnessed by Dr. Lee and myself. I have, I said. Elijah found it in Michael's office. He wasn't supposed to have it. Jack made me keeper of the originals. He feared your children would repurpose things. Mr. Barlow, I said gently, am I still the executor? You are, he said without hesitation. Jack removed Michael after that conversation I mentioned. He gave me the power to file the change quietly. No fanfare, just clean paperwork, countersigned and sealed. Your authority is undisputed, and if you need to challenge any move they've made, you'll win. The tears started again. This time not out of pain, but out of a strange, sharp loyalty I hadn't known Jack still held in reserve. Even in death, he had left armor for me. Why didn't you call me? I asked. Jack told me to wait, Barlow said. He said, and I quote, if Elaine needs this, she'll come looking. And if she doesn't need to. Elijah spoke then, quiet but clear. She needs it now. Barlow chuckled. So I hear. He also mentioned you, young man. Said you had more integrity than all your cousins combined. Elijah smiled, just a little. Barlow's voice turned brisk. I have all the documents, originals, the trust adjustments, the title clearances, the executor affidavit. I've also got a copy of a letter Jack wrote you, unopened. He gave it to me in case things ever got hostile. I felt the ground tilt under me. A letter? Yes, sealed. I can drive it over tomorrow or courier it first thing. No, I said. Come yourself, please. There was a pause. I'll be there by 10, he said. Thank you, I whispered. After we hung up, I stayed there for a long time, the phone still in my hand. Jack had never been loud, never a grand gesture man. But now, months after I buried him, I realized he'd been building a fortress for me brick by brick, one they hadn't counted on. I looked at Elijah. Your grandfather didn't just leave me something, I said. He trusted me with everything. Elijah nodded. And now it's your move. I got up, lit a fresh candle from the drawer, and walked to Jack's armchair. For the first time in months, I sat down, not as someone waiting to be spared, but as someone ready to strike. Barlow arrived just after 10 a.m., in that same wool overcoat he'd worn to Jack's funeral, the one with suede elbow patches and a stubborn button that never stayed fastened. He looked smaller now, older, but his presence filled the front hall like it always had, calm and understated. He brought no condolences, just a briefcase and the weight of quiet loyalty. I think it's time, he said. We sat at the dining table. Elijah, too, quiet, steady, his eyes darting to mine with the kind of protectiveness no 17-year-old should have to learn so early. Barlow opened the case with the careful reverence of someone disarming something dangerous. 3 folders. The first, thick and bound in a navy blue cover, was labeled in Jack's blocky handwriting, Will, finalized, March 17th. The second was slimmer, cream-colored, and read, Trust clauses, protective. But it was the third one that made me reach for the edge of the table. If Elaine is betrayed. Barlow placed that one aside like it might detonate. He began with the will, confirmed what Elijah had already told me, that Jack had updated everything months before his passing. I was sole beneficiary. The house, accounts, assets, everything was protected under a family trust. No ambiguity, no loopholes. Except the clause, the one Jack hadn't told me about. Barlow flipped to a highlighted section. It read, If Elaine Rhodes is moved from her primary residence without her full, documented, and independent consent, or if she is pressured to relinquish property or rights under duress, the following heirs forfeit their claim to any portion of the estate. I blinked hard. He put that in? He did. Barlow nodded. He anticipated resistance. From his own children? Barlow didn't answer. He didn't have to. Elijah spoke up. That's why they were rushing, trying to get her into supportive living before you knew. Barlow nodded again. That clause makes any such attempt not only immoral, but legally catastrophic for them. My fingers trembled as I touched the page. Jack had known. Somehow, deep down, he'd known they might try to erase me when he was gone. And he left a wall they didn't see coming. Then Barlow opened the third folder. Elijah leaned forward. Even he hadn't seen this one. On top was a yellow post-it. Jack's handwriting again, messier this time. If you're reading this, it means they proved me right. Under it, transcripts, dozens of them, audio logs, dates, names, CD recordings, and USB drives, neatly labeled. Barlow's voice lowered. He started recording after overhearing a conversation in the garage one afternoon, something about contingency planning. He clicked a small silver recorder and pressed play. The voice was unmistakable. My oldest son, Daniel. Dad's losing it. He won't remember to update anything. We give it a few months, and then we start talking options. A woman's voice, my daughter-in-law's, chimed in. We'll say it's about her safety, that she's overwhelmed. If we push just a little, she won't resist. Then laughter. Laughter. I stared at the recorder like it might leap off the table, like it might shatter from shame. Elijah stood, walked to the window. He didn't want me to see him wipe his eyes. Barlow turned it off. There's more, he said gently, but I'll let you decide when to hear them. I nodded, swallowed hard. Jack hadn't just protected me. He had anticipated their strategy. The gaslighting, the paper trails, the slow disassembling of my life. And he'd left me a matchbook to burn it all down, should I ever need to. Elijah came back and sat beside me. Grandpa didn't just love you, he said. He trusted you to survive them. And in that moment, with my late husband's foresight on paper and my grandson's hand steady on mine, I believed I could. We sat at the dining room table. Me, Elijah, and the small silver recorder that had suddenly become the most powerful object in the house. The turkey sat cold on the counter, plates untouched, candles burned low, and the centerpiece Jack carved, once a symbol of family, now just a stage prop for a family that had already left. I had asked Barlow for the rest of the files. I needed to hear it all. No softening, no protecting. If I was going to survive this betrayal, I had to see it for what it was, and not the polite fiction I'd been feeding myself for years. Elijah slid the USB drive into his laptop, clicked on the file titled November 12th, Dinner Meeting. It started with the scrape of chairs, cutlery, clinks of glasses. Then Daniel's voice. She won't ask. She never does. My stomach tightened. A pause. She's slowing down anyway, said Rebecca, his wife. She repeats things. Forgets appointments. It's not cruel, it's responsible. There were murmurs of agreement. Then Catherine, my daughter, spoke up. We can't keep doing the emotional caretaking. Dad babied her. We all know that. More clinking, a laugh. Don't worry, Daniel said again. She'll be out by Christmas. I already spoke with the realtors. They'll fast-track the staging once we clear her out. Silence filled the room I sat in, but the recording kept talking. She'll probably cry, said Rebecca, but she'll adapt. People her age have to. Supportive living isn't punishment. Then a voice I didn't expect. Michael, my youngest. The one who always brought me flowers on my birthday. Who cried at Jack's funeral and hugged me too long. He spoke quietly, almost unsure. Shouldn't we, at least tell her the truth? Let her be part of it? Daniel cut in sharp. She doesn't need more confusion. We'll say Emma got sick. Keep it simple. I couldn't breathe. I stared at the wood grain of the table like it might open and swallow me whole. My ears rang. My fingers twitched, searching for something, anything, to hold on to. Elijah closed the laptop gently. He didn't say, I'm sorry. He didn't say, it's okay. He just sat with me. Do you believe me now? He asked quietly. I nodded. It's not just betrayal, I whispered. It's premeditated. They'd gathered around a dinner table to discuss my removal like logistics for a business transaction. Scheduled my exit in between wine pours and casserole dishes. Turned my grief into an inconvenience, my silence into permission. I thought of the house I had scrubbed, polished, and decorated with trembling hands. The meals I'd poured memory into. The seed I'd left open for Jack like a quiet promise. And I thought of my children, the ones I had cradled through fevers, defended in parent-teacher conferences, forgiven through heartbreaks. And now, I was an item on their checklist. Remove mom, sell house, split inheritance. By Christmas. I leaned back in the chair. My body felt foreign, too heavy in the chest, too light in the limbs. Elijah reached across and held my hand. They don't get to do this, he said. They don't get to erase you. My throat tightened. They already did. While I was planning a feast, he squeezed gently. Then we unerase you. There was no rage in his voice, just certainty, a kind of loyalty that doesn't come from duty, but from truth, from seeing someone fully and standing beside them anyway. I looked at him, this boy who was becoming a man far too fast. His face was pale, eyes red-rimmed, jaw set like his grandfather's once had been during courtroom days. You're not like them, I said. He shrugged. I was raised by you and Grandpa, not by spreadsheets. And for the first time in days, I almost smiled. Almost. Because while part of me ached to cry, scream, collapse, the other part, the deeper part, had begun to crystallize, harden, clarify. They wanted me quiet. They expected obedience. They mistook grace for weakness. But the recording hadn't just revealed a betrayal. It revealed a line, and I had just stepped over it. They arrived at 2:10 p.m., All three of them. Daniel, Catherine, and Michael, each looking faintly puzzled, perhaps mildly annoyed. Not one of them offered a hug. Rebecca and Charles stayed in the car. Only Catherine's husband, Mark, followed her inside like a polite afterthought. I had asked them to come over, said there were important matters to discuss, the kind of language that makes adult children assume you're confused. Or worse, starting to slip. They came expecting tears. They came expecting me to beg for an explanation I already had. What they got was silence. Measured, intentional, heavy like church air before a funeral. I had laid out the dining table, not with food this time, but with paperwork, folders, copies, the will, the amendment, the notarized guardianship nullification, and a manila envelope labeled Protective Clause. Michael glanced at the stack first, his forehead creasing. Catherine reached for the documents, then stopped mid-motion when she caught my gaze. I sat at the head of the table, Jack's chair, my hands folded, my back straight. "Let's begin," I said. They exchanged glances. "I know about the dinner," I continued, "about the plan to move me out, about the guardianship paperwork, about the listing drafts, about the clause in the will." Daniel opened his mouth. "No," I said before he spoke. "This isn't a conversation. This is a correction." Catherine stepped forward. "Mom, we were just convenient, practical, responsible," I interrupted. "Yes, I heard every word. You made sure of that when you said them around Jack's recorder." Her face blanched. Michael took a step back. "How?" "Elijah showed me everything, including the texts, including the email chain, including the folder labeled If Elaine is Betrayed. I suppose you thought Jack wouldn't notice you circling like vultures before the funeral flowers had wilted." They were quiet now. It wasn't the kind of silence that seeks forgiveness. It was the kind that braced for consequence. I picked up the first document. This is the trust. The house was placed in it the year before Jack passed, which means it's not up for sale. Not unless I say so, which I won't. I handed the second folder across the table. "This is a legal amendment. You are no longer beneficiaries of Jack's estate. His original will had generosity in it. Mine has memory." Daniel finally snapped. "You can't do this." "Can't I?" I asked. Calm, dead center. "You tried to steal from a grieving widow while smiling through her cranberry sauce. You conspired, lied, manipulated, and now you're shocked there's a cost?" Catherine folded her arms. "This is emotional. You're making rash decisions." "No, you made rash decisions. This is just the invoice." Michael looked pained. "Mom, please, we weren't trying to hurt you." I looked him in the eye. "If this is about love," I said, "then you lost me years ago." His mouth opened, closed. He had nothing. They had nothing. I stood then, slowly, letting the full silence settle into their bones. "You used to be my children," I said, "but somewhere along the way, I became your project, your burden, something to manage." I looked to the window where the autumn sun filtered through Jack's favorite tree, the one Elijah still climbs. "You forgot who raised you. But I remember, and that's why I'm still standing." Daniel scoffed, shaking his head. "So what now? You just cut us off?" "No," I replied. "You did that the moment you chose convenience over character." The front door stood open behind them. No one moved. "I think we're done here," I said. They left, not together, but one by one, trailing shame and silence behind them. I didn't cry. Not then. There was no grief left for people who buried me before I was dead. There was only space. And in that space, the air finally felt like mine. The house was quiet again. The kind of quiet that comes after a storm. Not peaceful exactly, but emptied. The kind that makes you feel like something has broken loose and settled all at once. Elijah had gone upstairs to rest. He said he needed a minute. I knew the look in his eyes, the way they flickered between anger and guilt and something like mourning. He was grieving something he didn't yet have the words for. I stayed downstairs. Not because I needed to sit, but because I needed to remember. There was one drawer I hadn't opened since Jack passed. Bottom cabinet, right side. The old filing cabinet we used to joke was more secure than Fort Knox. It still smelled like cedar and dust. Inside were folders, tax documents, and insurance papers stacked with Jack's usual precision. But behind them, near the back, was a small burgundy envelope. My name was written across the front in Jack's unmistakable cursive. Steady. Intentional. Elaine, it read. Just that. I stared at it for a long time before I opened it. My hands trembled not with fear, but with the kind of reverence you have when you touch something sacred. Inside, the letter was dated 3 weeks before he died. Elaine, if you're reading this, they failed you. But you didn't fail me. You never did. I've watched you carry this family for 48 years. Through storms, through silence, through Sundays that should have been restful, but were always filled with everyone else's needs. You gave them everything, even when they stopped saying thank you, even when they stopped seeing you. I wish I had more time, not for me, for you. I wanted one more summer with you in the garden, one more Christmas with your laugh filling the kitchen, one more morning where your coffee's too strong and your eyes are still soft from sleep. But I knew that if I went first, they'd come circling like bankers at a widow's door. I heard the way they talked when they thought we weren't listening. I saw the emails, the entitlement, the planning, and I knew you would never believe the worst of them, even if it was true, because your heart is your best feature and your weakness. So I wrote this to say, you're not alone. I put things in place. I called Barlow. I rewrote the documents. I even made recordings. I know, it was sneaky, but so is betrayal. You don't owe them anything, Elaine. Not your house, not your peace, not your future. You gave enough. Now I want you to give something back to yourself. Freedom. Keep the house. Fill it with people who love you right. Take trips. Wear that acorn necklace, even if it doesn't match. Talk to Elijah. He reminds me of you, the real you, before motherhood took every corner of your energy. If they try to guilt you, don't bend. If they try to gaslight you, don't blink. If they try to come back only when they need something, you already know the door. You are not fragile, Elaine. You are a storm that softened herself to keep others safe. No more. Live, my love. And remember, you didn't fail me. You saved me. Every day you were mine. Jack. The paper trembled in my hands, not because I was crying, but because I'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen so completely. The clock ticked softly in the background. I folded the letter carefully, pressing the crease flat. I placed it in the drawer, but not hidden anymore, front and center where it belonged. Elijah came down a few minutes later, eyes still red. I smiled gently and handed him the letter. Grandpa always knew, I said. And now, so do I. He read it silently. His jaw tightened, then softened. When he looked up, he didn't say anything. He just reached for my hand and held it. And in that moment, I wasn't alone. Not anymore. The dining room table looked different this time. Not because I changed the centerpiece. Jack's pine cones still sat in the middle like a quiet guardian. But the air felt lighter. The silence that had once clung to the walls now hummed with something warmer. Expectation, maybe, or peace. I was setting 5 plates this time, not 10. And yet, for the first time in months, the table didn't feel empty. Elijah came downstairs holding a small bundle, extra candles he found in the linen drawer. Too much? He asked, raising an eyebrow. I smiled. Not at all. Light every single one. He grinned and got to work, arranging them between the rolls and the apple pie. This was our Thanksgiving Rito, 2 days after the real one. No performance, no forced traditions, just food, warmth, and people who wanted to be here. Mrs. Forbes arrived first, in her usual pale yellow coat and sturdy orthopedic heels. She brought sweet potatoes in a casserole dish wrapped in a checkered towel. They're not fancy, she said, but they're from the heart. You are the heart, I replied. and she beamed like I'd handed her a medal. Next came her niece, Nora, 23, shy and brilliant, always scribbling in a tiny notebook like the world was giving her clues. She offered to help plate the cranberry sauce, and then came Louis, my florist. He wasn't on the original guest list, but he dropped off a bouquet that morning, took one look at the spread and said, "You're not eating this alone again." I told him to come back at 6. He did, in a corduroy blazer and with a bottle of cider that still had the price tag on it. And just like that, we were a family. No one made speeches. No one tried to make up for the people who didn't show. We simply passed plates, shared stories, and let laughter grow naturally from the cracks they left behind. At one point, Elijah leaned over and whispered, "This is the best Thanksgiving I've ever had." I nodded, but I didn't trust my voice to answer. Not yet. After dessert, pecan pie, slightly overbaked, but nobody cared, I cleared the plates while Elijah made tea. The others drifted to the living room, Mrs. Forbes already claiming her favorite armchair, Louis paging through an old copy of National Geographic I'd left on the coffee table. Elijah joined me by the sink, drying dishes with a rhythm that felt older than 17. He didn't look up when he spoke. "Grandma, I was thinking, would it be crazy if I stayed here? Like, moved in?" I turned toward him slowly. "Just for senior year," he added quickly. "Dad and Mom, they're not really talking to me, and this house, it feels more like home than anywhere else right now." I set the sponge down. My heart, already softened from the evening, squeezed in the gentlest way. "You sure?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, I mean if you want that, if it wouldn't be too much." I walked to the hallway drawer, the one where Jack always kept extra keys, rubber bands, and batteries that probably expired 5 years ago. I pulled out a brass key, a little worn, a little stubborn in the lock sometimes, but solid. I held it out to him. "This is your home too," I said. He stared at it like it was glowing. Then carefully he took it from my hand and tucked it into his pocket. Outside, the wind rustled the leaves. Inside, someone laughed at a joke I didn't catch. The house felt alive again. Not in a loud way, but in the way a heartbeat reminds you you're still here, still needed, still loved. I hadn't lost a family. I'd simply found the one that had been waiting all along. The porch creaked gently beneath our chairs, the kind of old wood music that Jack used to call the house sighing. The lake in front of us shimmered in late November gold, that perfect slice of time when the sun doesn't set so much as it melts. I hadn't sat out here in months, not since Jack's funeral, not since the world got so loud with silence. But now, there was Elijah, curled beside me with a blanket across his knees, sipping cocoa from the mug that once said, "World's best dad," now faded down to Oral's best A. Neither of us said much. We didn't need to. The breeze did the talking. The water did the remembering. "Grandma," Elijah said after a long silence, "can I tell you something?" I turned to him, nodding. "You weren't just a good mom to them," he said. "You were my person." The words landed like a feather and an anvil, soft and shattering. I bit the inside of my cheek, trying to hold still, but my hand reached for his instinctively. "You rescued me," he said, "from that house, from their cold, from thinking I had to be someone I wasn't just to be loved." I looked at him, really looked. 17 years old and already more of a man than most who sat at that table last year. He had Jack's steadiness, my quiet, but his clarity, that was all his own. "Elijah!" My voice cracked, not from age but from relief. "You have no idea how much I needed to hear that." "I think I do," he said. "They left you because they saw you as something in their way. I stayed because you've always been the way forward." The sun dipped lower, casting the lake in amber. I could see our reflections stretched across the water. 2 silhouettes, one worn by time, the other just beginning. But both of us anchored, unshakable now. "I think I forgot who I was," I whispered. "Somewhere in the caretaking, the forgiving, the trying not to make waves, I disappeared." He didn't flinch. "Then let's bring her back," he said. "The you that painted the bathroom coral pink because white was too easy." The you that once yelled at a traffic cop for calling Grandpa old. The you who makes 3 pies just in case someone has 2 favorites. I laughed. Really laughed. Not politely. Not the kind that fades as soon as it lands. The kind that brings breath back into old lungs. You remember all that? Every bit, he said. It's how I know I'm safe here. Safe. That word carried more than warmth. It carried weight. And for the first time in nearly a year, I didn't feel like I was balancing on the edge of something. I felt grounded, seen, free. The house behind us didn't feel haunted anymore. It felt like a place where something new could begin, not despite the cracks, but because of them. As the last of the light faded and the porch lantern flickered on, I closed my eyes. Jack's voice didn't echo anymore. It rested, like a hand on my shoulder that didn't need to speak to be heard. I had made it, not unscarred, but unbroken. And in case someone out there needs to hear this too, you are not obligated to love people who hurt you just because they share your name. You don't owe your peace to anyone who would sell it for convenience. You don't have to stay silent just to keep the dinner table calm. If you've ever had to protect yourself from the very people who should have protected you, you're not alone. I'm Elaine. I'm 69, and I took my life back. Now tell me, where are you watching from? Because if my story found its way to you, maybe your voice is ready to return too.